On Mount Carmel, before hundreds of witnesses, fire descended from a clear sky, consuming not just the sacrifice, but the stones, dust, and water around the altar. Was this ancient account describing a divine intervention, or can modern science explain what terrified an entire nation? Today, we investigate one of history's most documented supernatural claims, where meteorology meets theology in an explosive encounter that changed the fate of Israel forever. Mount Carmel rises majestically from Israel's Mediterranean coast, its strategic location making it the perfect amphitheater for what would become history's most famous religious duel. In 9th century BCE, during the reign of King Ahab, Israel faced its worst drought in living memory, 3.5 years without rain. The prophet Elijah, emerging from exile, challenged the entire religious establishment of his time to a contest that would determine which deity truly controlled the forces of nature. The setup was methodical and public. 450 prophets of Baal, supported by the royal court, would prepare their altar on one side. Elijah, standing alone, would prepare his on the other. Both would call upon their respective gods to send fire from heaven to consume their sacrifices. The God who answered with fire would be acknowledged as the true deity of Israel. What makes this account particularly intriguing from a Kongsi scientific perspective is the detailed description of atmospheric conditions. The text mentions the prolonged drought, the clear sky, and the specific meteorological context. These aren't vague mystical descriptions, but precise environmental details that modern meteorologists can analyze. The stage was set not just for a religious confrontation, but for a phenomenon that would challenge our understanding of atmospheric science, crowd psychology, and the intersection between faith and observable reality in the ancient world. Elijah's confidence appears almost reckless when examined through a modern lens. He not only accepted the challenge, but systematically increased the impossibility of natural fire ignition. After the prophets of Baal failed to produce fire despite hours of ritualistic dancing and self-mutilation, Elijah reconstructed his altar using 12 stones, dug a trench around it, arranged the wood, placed the sacrifice, and then took the most puzzling step of all. He ordered the entire setup to be drenched with water, not once but 3 times. From a scientific standpoint, this action eliminates virtually every natural explanation for spontaneous combustion. Wet wood doesn't ignite easily, soaked sacrificial animals create additional moisture, and the trenches filled with water would have created a humidity microenvironment that would resist any spark or ember. Elijah essentially created conditions that would challenge even modern flame-throwing technology. The psychological aspect is equally fascinating. Elijah performed these actions in full view of hundreds of witnesses, including King Ahab, Queen Jezebel's representatives, and common people. He was either supremely confident in a supernatural outcome or orchestrating one of history's most elaborate deceptions. The crowd dynamic suggests something genuine occurred. Mass hallucination typically doesn't produce the detailed, consistent accounts that followed this event. The witnesses weren't just casual observers, but included hostile parties who would have been motivated to expose any trickery. Modern atmospheric science provides several theoretical frameworks for understanding what might have occurred on Mount Carmel, though none fully explain the documented phenomena. Ball lightning represents the most scientifically plausible natural explanation, a rare electrical phenomenon that can appear during specific atmospheric conditions, even from clear skies. These spherical electrical manifestations can reach temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit and have been documented consuming organic and inorganic materials with extraordinary intensity. However, ball lightning typically lasts only seconds and rarely targets specific locations with the precision described in the Elijah account. The fire that descended didn't merely ignite the sacrifice, it consumed the wood, the stones, the dust, and evaporated the water in the trenches. This suggests an energy release far beyond typical electrical phenomena, approaching the intensity of lightning strikes, but with unprecedented duration and focus. St. Elmo's fire presents another atmospheric possibility, a weather phenomenon where electrical discharges create visible plasma around pointed objects during thunderstorms. Mount Carmel's elevation and coastal location create ideal conditions for such electrical activity. Yet St. Elmo's fire doesn't generate sufficient heat to consume materials, making it an inadequate explanation for the comprehensive destruction witnessed. The most intriguing meteorological aspect remains the timing precision. Natural electrical phenomena don't respond to human scheduling or verbal commands. The fire descended exactly when Elijah called upon it, after the failed attempts of Baal's prophets, suggesting either remarkable coincidence or forces beyond atmospheric science, operating according to different principles than we currently understand. The psychological dynamics of the Mount Carmel event deserve particular scrutiny because they involve not just individual testimony, but collective witness behavior that followed predictable patterns. Mass hysteria typically produces inconsistent accounts, with details varying dramatically between witnesses and often contradicting basic physical laws. However, the Elijah account demonstrates remarkable consistency across multiple sources and includes details that suggest genuine physical phenomena rather than psychological projection. The crowd's reaction provides crucial evidence. Immediately after the fire descended, the witnesses didn't disperse in confusion. They performed coordinated actions, seizing and executing the prophets of Baal. This suggests they interpreted what they saw as conclusive proof rather than ambiguous phenomena open to interpretation. Mass hysteria rarely produces such decisive, unified action among diverse groups, including political leaders, religious authorities, and common people. The aftermath psychology is equally revealing. The event immediately ended the drought, with rain arriving shortly after Elijah's subsequent prayer. This meteorological sequence, supernatural fire followed by natural rain, created a psychological validation loop that reinforced the witnesses' interpretation of having observed genuine divine intervention. The combination of visual, thermal, and subsequent meteorological phenomena created multiple sensory confirmations that would be difficult to fake or imagine collectively. Most significantly, the event's psychological impact extended far beyond the immediate witnesses. Word spread throughout Israel and neighboring nations, influencing political and religious policies for generations. False or exaggerated accounts rarely generate such sustained historical consequences, suggesting the core phenomena were substantial enough to warrant the dramatic civilizational changes that followed. Contemporary researchers have documented several incidents that bear striking similarities to the Mount Carmel event, though none match its scale or precision. In 1994, lightning struck the Cristo Redentor statue in Brazil during clear weather, creating a fireball effect that consumed surrounding materials while leaving the statue intact. In 2011, ball lightning was captured on high-speed cameras in China, showing spherical electrical phenomena lasting several seconds and consuming organic materials with intense heat. NASA's atmospheric research has identified upward lightning phenomena where electrical discharges originate from elevated surfaces during specific atmospheric conditions, even without visible storm clouds. Mount Carmel's elevation and coastal location would create ideal conditions for such phenomena. However, these modern observations still fall short of explaining the controlled timing and comprehensive consumption described in the ancient account. The Israeli Meteorological Service has studied Mount Carmel's unique microclimate, noting unusual electrical activity during certain seasonal transitions. The mountains, as positioned between Mediterranean moisture and inland dry air, creates atmospheric instabilities that generate unexpected electrical phenomena. During drought conditions, these instabilities become more pronounced, potentially creating conditions for extraordinary electrical events. Archaeological investigations of Mount Carmel have revealed evidence of intense heat exposure in ancient settlement layers, including vitrified stones and melted materials dating to periods consistent with biblical chronology. While not definitive proof, these findings suggest the region experienced episodes of extreme thermal events that left permanent physical evidence, supporting the plausibility of the documented phenomena. The Mount Carmel incident forces us to confront the boundaries between scientific explanation and human experience. Even if we could perfectly replicate the atmospheric conditions, the witness testimonies, and the physical evidence, we would still face the profound question of timing precision that transcends statistical probability. Natural phenomena operate according to discoverable laws, but those laws don't typically respond to human invocation with such dramatic punctuality. This doesn't necessarily require abandoning scientific methodology, but rather acknowledging its current limitations in explaining certain categories of historical events. The fire from heaven challenges our understanding not because it violates physical laws, but because it suggests those laws might operate within larger frameworks we haven't yet discovered. Quantum mechanics has already demonstrated that reality functions according to principles that often contradict common sense and classical physics. The Elijah event represents a category of phenomena that exists at the intersection of historical documentation, physical evidence, and experiences that transcend current scientific models. Rather than dismissing such accounts as primitive superstition or accepting them uncritically as supernatural intervention, perhaps the most honest approach acknowledges both the strengths and limitations of our current understanding. Modern physics has revealed a universe far stranger than our ancestors imagined, where particles exist in multiple states simultaneously, where observation affects reality, and where information can travel instantaneously across vast distances. The fire from heaven might represent not a violation of natural law, but an expression of natural laws we haven't yet comprehended, operating within dimensions of reality that our current instruments cannot measure, but our consciousness can sometimes witness. The fire that descended on Mount Carmel remains suspended between explanation and mystery, challenging both skeptical dismissal and blind faith. Whether divine intervention, unknown natural phenomena, or something beyond our current categories of understanding, it forces us to remain humble before the vastness of what we don't yet know. In a universe where consciousness observes quantum reality into existence, perhaps some fires burn according to laws we're only beginning to glimpse.